what's going on, guys? Bflattened here with a brand new video today. Today we're going over Tornado Tantrum, the Druid build for tornadoes. So what I want to do is I want to go over all the skill points, but the Paragon points I'm going to kind of breeze over. So feel free to pause the video and I will highlight all of the things that are important for the build. But feel free to pause the video and go ahead and take a look at the Paragons from there. So skill points, we're doing Wind Shear all the way up to Fierce Wind Shear. Wind Shear is going to be some of our basic attacks, Spirit Gain. Part of the Wild and Wild Impulses, 1 and 3 apiece there. Tornado is going to have to be stacked at 5, of course. We want Raging Tornado. Enemies hit with Tornado have a 10% chance to become vulnerable for 3 seconds. I get an additional 4 points from my gloves. We'll get there when we get there. Predatory Instinct, critical strike chance against close enemies is increased by 6%. We're not always going to be at a distance. Enemies are going to be surrounding us and attacking us. And then we have the Grade Gate. You gain 9% movement speed while in Werewolf, and it persists 3 seconds after leaving Werewolf. It's actually really good to get in and out of situations, especially with our dodge attacks or our dodge abilities that we have. Cyclone Armor, this one's really good because we have not only knockback, but we also have the damage reduction. Every 10 seconds, the Cyclone Armor intensifies, and we get 30% damage reduction for 2 seconds. One of our defensive skills that we need. And then we also have Blood Howl, which is another defensive skill. And we want to take Preserving. Preserving Blood Howl increases our attack speed by 15% for 4 seconds. This allows us to throw out tornadoes at rapid rates, along with our attack speed that we have on our gear. Kills reduce the cooldown of Blood Howl, which is great. The faster that we get Blood Howl and are able to rotate between our 3 defensive skills is excellent. Speaking of our defensive skills, Hurricane. I call this a defensive skill because enemies affected by Hurricane deal 20% less damage is what we're doing with Savage Hurricane over the chance to make them vulnerable. We have that already. So we want to do 20% less damage from the enemies to us. Stacking that with the 30% damage reduction plus all of our rolls, you can just sit in swarms of enemies and you'll be fine. I'll show you what the rotation looks like right away. Neurotoxin, poison enemies are slowed for 8%. Envenom, you and your companions deal 60% bonus crit against poison enemies. And Toxic Claws, critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 8% of their basic base damage as poisoning damage. So tornadoes will hit something, we have a chance to poison them, and then we slow them for 8%, and then we do increase critical strike damage against poisoned enemies. Down into our ultimate, we have Grizzly Rage. Grizzly Rage, we have to take Supreme Grizzly Rage. You gain 8% of your maximum life, which for me is 1100 as Fortify while it is active. In this corner, we have Defiance. Nature Magic skills deal 12% damage to elites. Circle of Life, we only have 2 in there. Nature Magic skills that consume Spirit heal you for 2%. And Resonance. Nature Magic skills increase damage, triple it if it's an Earth skill. So we only are doing the Nature Magic deal 8% increased damage because we don't have an Earth skill. Defensive Posture, increase the amount of Fortify you gain from all sources by 15%. It's excellent. And 15% chance when you get struck to fortify you for 4% of your maximum life, which is 617, as it calculates for me. And finally, we have Perfect Storm. Storm skills that you cast grant 1 spirit and deal 15% increased damage when damaging a vulnerable, immobilized, or slowed. So we have a chance to slow enemies. We have a chance to hit vulnerable enemies, as we've done with... Where are you? Wind Shear can vulnerable enemies, and Tornado can vulnerable enemies. So Tornado will be seeking out targets and hitting multiple targets as well, so we get more for that. Paragon Points, like I said, I'm going to be going over just the very basic forms. So we have our start here. We have Territorial in here. Feel free to pause at any time to take a look at all the skills if you want to copy it straight for straight. Here we have Toxic Bane. In the glyph socket, we have Fang and Claw. which I need to upgrade still so I can get the 40 willpower out of that. But Overturn, we have Heightened Malice, which is the name of the Paragon board, by the way. Heightened Malice. Another one is Overturn and Toxic Bane. We deal more damage to poison targets. Deal more damage to poison enemies with Sinking Fangs. To the right of Heightened Malice, we have Lust for Carnage. Lust for Carnage is going to give us Werewolf with the glyph socket that we have here, which gives us more damage reduction while in werewolf form. Fantastic. To the left, we take Earth and Sky. And then we have Shapeshifter, Determination, Tenacity, Slayer, Nimble. This one is called Inner Beast, by the way. We don't take Inner Beast, but this is the name of the Paragon board. Hey, what's up, Bailey? How you doing? Hello, hello. To the left of Inner Beast, we take a few skills in here. We need Reclamation, and this one's called Ancestral Guidance. After spending 75 Spirit, you deal 30% increased damage to for 5 seconds. And then right above the one that we were in previously, Inner Beast, we want to take Thunderstruck. So we're going with the Exploit glyph here, which gives us more dexterity, or dexterity for the socket itself. When an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable. That's with all our vulnerable skills. We take Deluge, we take Lightning Resilience, we take Thunderstruck. We also take Hubris down here. Stormcaller as well is another big one. 10% storm skill damage, which is Tornado. Feel free to pause at any time to copy those skill trees. And let's go ahead and move on to the gear really quickly, shall we? So I'm doing Tempest Roar, obvious reasons. Sovereign Mail, this is 4 damage reduction. Gain 15% damage reduction while shapeshifted into a werewolf. We're doing Tornado will seek up to 3 targets. Attack speed, crit chance, lucky hit chance, Tornado. 4 damage reduction pants. And then Disobedience. So we get 1.1% increased armor for 4 seconds when we deal any form of damage. While unstoppable and for 4 seconds after, we get increased movement speed and we can move through enemies. Our axe is going to be core skill Fortify. We have a lot of Fortify skills. This is Blood Howl, critical strike chance. Ring number 1 is critical strike with core skills, increase your attack speed by 24%. Duration of Drizzly Rage is increased by 5 seconds. Critical strikes while Drizzly Rage is active, increase your critical strike damage by 10%. And then we also have Drizzly Rage now shapeshifts you into a dire werewolf. We get movement speed instead of damage reduction, and a 75% spirit cost reduction bonus. In addition, it heals you for 10%. So everything here is going to be giving us insane amounts of damage reduction, so we can just sit in groups of enemies. The big thing to note is that as long as you're hitting an enemy, you will not die, and as long as you're hitting an enemy, you will gain spirit. The important thing to note on the rotation is that you want to cycle between your 3 defensive skills. The Cyclone Armor that we talked about, the Blood Howl that we talked about, and Hurricane for the damage reduction. Cycle between those, activate your Drizzly Rage when necessary, and then from there it's just tornadoes. You just hit enemies and you can cycle through those, you'll be fine. I was able to solo all of the endgame bosses, with the exception of Duriel. I haven't done Duriel yet. You can challenge Lilith pretty well. Switch up to a Mad Wolf's Glee if you want to do that. But the hard part about Lilith is dodging her one-shot attacks. Damage is fine. I was able to do a tier 99 with 4-player scaling, and I'm also able to comfortably do tier 100 solo. And it can farm all the bosses, so you can farm better gear. World bosses are fine. So I would say that this build does what it's supposed to do. Last but not least, let's go into the vampire powers. We are doing Sanguine Brace. When you kill an enemy, you fortify. Metamorphosis, when you evade, you get unstoppable. Prey on the Weak, you deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Anticipation, your ultimate skill's cooldown is 20% cooldown reduction, so that's Drizzly Rage. And finally, we have Ravenous. Lucky Hit, up to 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed for 6 seconds, which gives us a 58% current bonus for what we're doing at the moment. So that, along with the 2 attack speed skills, we can get over 100% attack speed. So let's go ahead and find a group of enemies. I cleared the first area just to test out before recording. So that's why it's a little empty. Let us take a right over here. Okay, so what we want to do immediately is we want to make sure that our spirit's in a good position. Let's cycle between our defensive skills. And then from here, we're just sitting and floating in all this damage and the explosions that the lunatics are doing. And we're just throwing out tornadoes. That's it. My life will go down a little bit, but it'll also bounce back up, and then the enemies will be dead before I am in any sort of danger. As you can see, I went down to about half HP there with like 3 lunatics and 1 strong attack from that enemy over there. But then immediately I activated my defensive skills, I rotated my skills, and I'm back up to full life. Plus also I have my fortify that's going through, which is another like 1000 fortify on top of my armor and HP that I have as well. Which I'm sitting on about 12,000-ish armor when all my skills go through. That's disobedience, by the way. 18,000 attack power, 14,000 life. We're pretty strong. Now, is this build going to do 90 bajillion damage in 1 tornado? No, absolutely not. So if you're looking for that kind of build, this is not the build for you. However, this build here is going to be very, very consistent. And I like consistency a little bit more than occasional 900 bajillion damage hits. Each tornado will pass through an enemy, and it'll do approximately 30,000 too if it crits, maybe 3, maybe 200,000-ish damage. But that's per second per tornado. Do you see how many tornadoes we have out there? That's per second, by the way, when it passes through an enemy. So if we take 6 tornadoes, we take, say, an average of 100,000 damage, times by 6 tornadoes, and do that per second. That's a lot of damage that's stacked up very, very quickly. Enemies don't really like that much. So, as you can see, we're just kind of floating in the suppressor there. There's 3 elites that are wailing on us. We have no spirit going down at all. There are times where if there's enough enemies, you will be gaining more spirit than you can button mash your controller, or controller for me. Oh, this is going to be a nice group of spicy enemies here. This is a good test. Big elite that's wailing on me. Oh, I actually died there. Okay. So, key thing to note, you're not invincible. Another key thing to note, make sure that your unstoppable skills are available when you need them. So that's a good example of needing an unstoppable skill when we get stunned in a big group of enemies like that. Good thing to note, and I'm glad that we got to test that on screen. So, a couple of modifiers in Nightmare Dungeons that suck. I think it's safe to say that electrified obelisks are never fun. But another big one is suppressor. Suppressor is an annoying one. Yeah, those freezes there, those are not fun. Suppressor is a really, really bad one for this build. Along with crowd control resist, things like critical strike resist, those things are kind of annoying. I found out that backstabbers is not really fun either. Resistance breakers, not great either. So if you can actively avoid some of those, that would be excellent. Nightmare Portal is totally fine. Death Pulse, pretty decent. Blood Blister is totally decent. The one thing to note... Oh, I actually forgot to do Spirit Boons. Holy shit. We're doing Wariness, take 10% reduced damage from elites. We're doing Scythe Talons, you get 5% increased critical strike chance. Duration of ultimate skills by 25%. And we're also doing Masochist, which is critical strikes while shapeshifting skills have a 75% chance to heal you for 3%. And also nature magic skills have a 10% to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill. So we bond with the snake. Bond with the snake. Yeah, key thing to note is that your unstoppable skills... Oh wow, I actually got blown up there. Because I had no damage resist going there. That's why it's key to rotate between your defensive skills. If you enter a room like that with no rotation of your defensive skills, you will just get blown up. So you always have to make sure that you rotate between them. Otherwise, you will be getting in a lot of trouble. what I was saying earlier is the key thing to note is as long as you're hitting enemies, that's the important bit. Hit enemies, hit enemies, hit enemies. You're going to have to directionally point your tornadoes to kind of guide them, even though tornadoes do seek out targets. You sometimes have to point them in the right direction so that they can get their maximum value. If you don't, that's where AI kind of takes over, and it cannot always be the smartest, as I'm sure we're aware that AI is not excellent all the time. So kind of just pointing them in the right direction is good to have. It's especially useful for bosses, because bosses are, they move around a fair amount. Get a good group of enemies going here. Let's really test this thing out. No, I'm gonna die here. Oh no, there we go. Rotation, rotation. We're good, we're good. And there's Blood Howl. Blood Howl will save us here. Occasionally we might have to throw up a potion. See, that was Electrified Obelisk with all those lunatics. That was not ideal. I'm kind of throwing myself into situations that are not the greatest. But as I mentioned earlier, as I'm streaming at the moment, I mentioned earlier that this was just a stress test. If you play the build safely, you're never going to run into these scenarios. This is just me being dumb. Alright, let's go ahead and slay these enemies. And then I'll probably cut the video and meet you guys at the boss, because I want to show the single target potential of this too, just so that you guys can see it. I think we got mobbing down pretty well. So I'm going to meet you guys at the boss. Alright, and we're back at the boss door, so let's go ahead and see what we can do to this boss. So keeping in mind about what we're doing with the rotation, just like in mobbing, we want to activate our Cyclone Armor first, and then we want to rotate between all of our defensive skills. Get Grizzly Rage online once it's on. Now, it's not going to be doing the most amount of damage in the world, as you can see. However, it's consistent in the sense that you're not going to die. He is moving around quite a bit, so just make sure to point the tornadoes in his direction. And as you can see, I'm button mashing. I'm button mashing my my tornado. This is my tornado here. I'm gaining more spirit than I can button mash my tornado. Once that Grizzly Rage is online and doing its thing, you can just slam on your tornado key, whatever it is, on keyboard or on controller. Like, I'm still going. As long as you're hitting an enemy and you have Grizzly Rage going, like, that's it. Gaining more than I can button mash. Making sure my defense skills are up. Not the most amount of damage in the world, but I was never in trouble. And that is a Tornado Druid. If you liked what you saw, I appreciate you guys watching. And I hope you can build your own Tornado Druid. Have fun with it. I'll see you guys in the next one. My name is Bflattened. I'm signing on out of here. Take care, all. Laters.